اهلا بيكم معانا وبودكاست جديد. والنهارده لاول مره البودكاست بتاعنا هيبقى بالانجليزي، لكن هتلاقوا الترجمه موجوده تحت بالعربي، لكن الكلام هيبقى سهل مش محتاج كلكعه. هو الكلكعه في الموضوع نفسه. احنا بنسمع كتير قوي على مراكز البيانات. ايه يا عم مراكز البيانات دي المراكز اللي بيحطوا فيها البيانات، اللي الناس بتخزن فيها المعلومات. المراكز البيانات دي بقالها طبعا سنين طويلة وخدت أشكال كتيرة، لكن كل ما التكنولوجيا تتقدم كل ما بتحتاج مراكز بيانات مختلفة. فبقى عندنا دلوقتي حاجة اسمها The Modern Data Centers أو مراكز البيانات الحديثة، اللي تقدر بقى تتعامل مع الذكاء الصناعي وتقدر تتعامل مع حاجات كده. فاحنا جبنا لكم من آخر الدنيا، من أمريكا جبنا لكم أهم خبير في تصميم وبناء مراكز البيانات يشرح لنا ايه اللي بيحصل في العالم ده وايه اللي هيحصل الفترة اللي جاية. برحب بضيفي جيمي سنيد، المدير العام لمراكز البيانات في شركة WB. You're most welcome here in Cairo.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
All right. Of course, you promised before we start that you come in when the weather is a little bit better than now.
Yes, I'm definitely looking to coming back in November when it's a little nicer.
Perfect. All right. Let me start with the modern data center. What makes the modern data center a modern data center?
That's a really good question. What we see is the development of AI over the last year. Really has been exciting. So it's a change in the way that data centers have been built for the past 10 to 15 years, and what we see on power and just the use of those data centers is really being revolutionized because of the amount of AI that's into the world today. So it's really driving energy cost and ways to cool these data centers from infrastructure sides, just things we haven't seen before.
Let me try and understand, and we'll call that data centers for dummies. the lecture you're going to give me today. So we have the data centers. The data centers have been there since time immemorial. Mm-hmm. And they've worked on collecting data, putting them on servers, and storing those servers in the data center.
Correct.
Anything different?
Pretty much the same. It's just the power of the computers now with like I was saying, the AI. They've just gotten smarter. Computers are smarter. They're more futuristic than kind of like we used to see in back in the day. Computers talking to us on our level were years away from that, but that's where we're driving with the AI. But it's in theory, it's the same thing.
It's the server.
It's the server.
The server that you have there is more advanced.
Correct.
It's the processing power is higher.
Much higher.
And that requires what in the data center that is different in the design in the first place?
Yeah, so just to put it in perspective, a Google search, when somebody just puts in anything on Google, it uses a certain amount of power just for that server to do its work. Now when people do a search in AI, it's 10 times more power. So as you know, in this world, today we're really struggling with where to get all of our power from anyway. And now we're starting to 10 times what we thought it was going to be, we're seeing from the AI market. So how do we get that power to the data centers? Where is it coming from? And then once we use that power in the data center, how do we cool it? That's one of the biggest things. And how do they keep, for years what we've done has been air. We just blow air into the room across the servers and it cools them. But now they're so intense, so power intensive, you can't do that. So we're having to come up with new ways to cool this equipment and keep it happy.
Okay, I'll take it again with what you said, but I'll go step by step. First of all, if I go to Google and I say name top 10 people who have white hair.
Right.
And they will say Osama Kamal and they will say Jamie Sneed and would give us the list.
Yeah.
But if I go to the AI and I'd say, tell me how can Jamie Sneed and Osama Kamal change their looks in the future about their white hair, that goes with a power 10 times in order to find out who we are.
Yes, because the typical search it just goes and scours a database, right? And it comes back and answers your question. These are the 10 people we see with white hair. And now you're asking it to make an opinion. And it kind of, to do that, it has to process in a different way than we've seen in the past. And the speed at which it does it today is kind of amazing. If anybody's got an Android phone, or now Meta's doing it on there, actually it's on WhatsApp even, a certain component of AI, and it's returning that result with an opinion as fast as it was before when it was just doing a search. So that's why it uses more power. It's using many more servers, I think, to come up with
So
that.
it's more like when we used to study, when you study geography, so that's the Google of things.
Yes.
And when you go into engineering very complex processes, you'd find yourself you'd say, my brains are hot because of what I did. So these brains, they get hot.
They get super hot, yes. And so that's been a challenge from us on the engineering side. I'm a professional engineer, so we design the power to these data centers, and we also figure out ways to cool them. So in the past, it was air. Now we're taking water. And in some cases, they're taking water actually to the chip inside the server, which was
inside the server
inside
itself.
the server itself.
So you would walk into the modern data center. You don't need to be wearing a coat, for example, as you do in the traditional data centers.
Yes, the days of when we first started designing data centers in the 90s, you would go in there, it would be 60 degrees, in U.S. I'm not sure what that is in Celsius.
Probably 60 degrees will be about 10 or 12.
10 or 12. And so you would have to wear a coat. Now we see more that was really inefficient because you were cooling this big space and you didn't really need to. So now as we're more concerned about how do we cut energy, how do we save this planet for our future generations, that's been a big push in the U.S. and across the world. So we've got to come up with better ways. So don't condition the whole place. Let's put the air where it needs to be just to keep the racks happy.
So it's in the rack or in the server or in the chip?
Yeah, it can go all the way to the chip.
To the chip? To
the chip, and even now you're starting to see a technology where it's a mineral oil, and the servers actually drop into the liquid, which is... It's mind-boggling when you think about that, because
if my watch drops into that, there it goes, bye-bye.
Right, exactly. So they're designing servers now, and that's as efficient as it gets. It's rejecting its heat straight into this liquid, which is, recycling and going through heat exchangers and such to get rid of the heat. So it's interesting.
So I remember when we talked about data centers in the past, they said one of the best places to have a data center in is Finland, because it's already cold. Mm-hmm. If you think about having it in Egypt or Saudi or UAE or Libya or in this region, it's crazy because you can't, the economics would not work out.
Yeah, that's been in the past what we've talked about. Anytime you're in Finland, North America, you can get what we call free cooling, because we can exchange the heat without having to run a compressor. It can just be done with the air, right? So that's a big win-win for everybody from the energy perspective.
Except for Finland and North America.
Right, except for North America. Exactly.
So now we have these new technologies, but definitely the technologies themselves are by far more expensive.
Yes, by far more expensive.
So whatever you saved on electricity, you're spending it on chips.
Chips, yes, correct.
So who's the winner here?
The chip makers, NVIDIA. NVIDIA. Any of the server manufacturers, they're big winners here, and we're all winners, I guess, in a way, because we all get to watch our cat videos on the TikTok or whatever. That's what's driving most of this infrastructure. It's funny when people think about that. It's like, what is a data center? I don't know what that is. Well, you're affected by it every day. Everything you do is going to a data center somewhere.
So long as you're using your phone or you're using your computer, so
correct.
You're there. You're in the data center.
Yes, and we have, in the U.S., we have a lot of protest against data centers because of the energy use and the water use, and the funny part is they organize all of their events on Facebook. So they're using the very thing they're protesting against. So it's a strange world that we live in.
Is it because people do not really understand what it's all about?
Yeah.
even in the U.S.?
Oh yeah, it's an educational thing. We need to do a better job as professionals, and I speak on this from time to time. That to be successful in any venture, you need to educate the public. They can't be ignorant of what we're doing, and when we don't inform them, it's not surprising that they don't understand. So, and anybody that's dealing with the environmental issues today, we see how much they voice their opinions, and so it's important that we, as in my profession, is to educate the people to say, yes, that's super important. We definitely have to worry about the environment and what we're doing to the environment, but this is here to stay. Nobody's going to get rid of their phones. We're not going to get rid of all of this technology. It's only going to grow, and we're only penetrating into more markets like Africa. It's a very young continent, and today the internet penetration rate's pretty low, and it's just going to get higher, which is going to drive this demand even more.
But I mean, Africa, you don't need those mega data centers here in Africa, do you?
Not yet. I think that the day will come that we will. But if you ask me today, no, the rate's not there. But in 10 years, I think we'll start seeing some of these we'll see some before that, because it always takes the first one to come, like a Microsoft. But eventually, as the population increases their use of smartphones, and one of the things was, it's not just the number of smartphones that are being added into the market. It goes back to that Google search versus the AI. It's the amount of usage on each data thing. So it's an exponential growth, which is going to lead to us having to have it. And what it really comes down to is latency, which is how fast they can get their data. They don't want it to lag. You don't want to watch your streaming videos. So
Yeah.
that's where we'll see this grow here.
But I mean, the way we talk, because you're just making it simpler for the likes of me, we're talking about what we watch on YouTube or Facebook and so on. But actually, there is quite a significance for governments to be using those data centers for certain purposes. Would they shift with the modern data center, or the traditional data centers are good enough for governmental data?
So, for a lot of their applications, the stuff that's existing is sufficient, but they are also going into the AI market. Our militaries in particular are really investing a lot into AI technology, and it's an arms race, for no better really way to say that. And so all of our governments are really investing heavily into AI development for peaceful initiatives and for an arms race as well, in my opinion. So they will. They're slower to turn up money for data centers, but I think eventually they will have to as well.
But to have data equals money.
Yes,
if
big
you
money.
know how to process the data. Like, for example, the Ministry of Health has a lot of data, medical records, and stuff like that. How do they utilize that to monetize it?
That's a good question. I think maybe in taking health information and putting it into an AI program or anything that can trend why things are happening. Can we predict the next COVID? Can we predict any of that stuff based on the new technologies we're developing? And so somebody that can develop programs like that can definitely monetize it and sell it to other medical agencies or other governments to try to understand health trends or any kind of trend, really. It is all about trending and where we see the next problem being.
A friend of mine was just telling me there is no money in AI, there is no money in data centers, money is in data. Is this correct?
Well, yeah, I think that the actual money is the data, but you need the data centers to get the data.
Of course.
Right. So that's the developers of data centers. I think there's money there, quite a bit, or Microsoft wouldn't be investing $2 billion in Africa, and they're not just giving $2 million away or $2 billion for nothing. They're expecting to get $6 billion back.
At least.
Yeah, at least. So they're a business. They're doing it for a reason. Now they do have the data, but they also build the data centers. But the developers that we work with in the U.S. that aren't Microsoft, but they're leasing to Microsoft, they're leasing to Google. It is a money maker all the way around. And I think we've talked in the past that in the U.S. it's the most bankable project in the country. We recently read that a line data center went to a bank to borrow $1 billion, and the bank said, "Here, take two," because we know that the money's there.
Money's coming back.
The money's coming back because you guys are going to build this data center. You're going to lease it to whoever, and you're going to make 10 times the money. So
we'll stop for a short break, and we'll come back to continue this interesting talk about the modern data centers. أهلا بكم معانا مرة تانية، وبنستكمل الحوار الممتع ده عن حاجة ممتعة وغريبة وجديدة يمكن بنسمع عنها لكن ما نعرفش هي بتعمل ايه. عرفنا في الجزء الأولاني شوية عن موضوع المودرن داتا سنتر، لكن هناخد الموضوع أبعد شوية في الجزء الثاني من حوارنا مع جيمي سنيد، المدير العام لمراكز البيانات في شركة WB. I'm welcoming you again. WB, what does it do?
So WB, we're a consulting engineering firm. We design power, HVAC plumbing systems for facilities, whether campus or a single building. That's basically our specialty. And then we also work as an owner's rep. So owners, they're wanting to build a data center, for example, but they don't have a lot of experience. They'll hire us to help them understand the process from picking a site to through the design, through construction. So we're multifaceted in anything to do with the data center or any building in particular.
All right, I'll start with this initial point with the data center, which is picking a site.
Yes.
What do you pick a site according to?
So there's several things that we help them evaluate. In particular, is there power available? That's number one. Is there fiber? You got to have connectivity because you don't want to have to bring that to the site after. So we look for areas that already have that. Is it a natural disaster area? We don't want to be there. Obviously, we don't want something flooding out our data center. And then one of the biggest ones is tax breaks. Is that area friendly to data centers? Are they giving them tax incentives to be there? And the power, not only power availability, but cost of power. The cheaper the power, the better.
Why do they do soil research?
Soil?
Soil research. They do studies on the soil before they build the data center.
Yeah, it's probably a couple of reasons. I mean, number one, it's a constructability. How is it going to be able to support what we're building there? And then also, is there any data centers? We have a lot of grounding issues, so we have to ground things. Is it open to that? Can we ground properly all the systems that we have in there? And is there any issues with toxicity or anything like that? But for the most part, it's probably it's dealing with what we've got to put in the ground and
stability of the ground itself.
Yeah, because if we've got a area that's really well established and it's a bedrock area, it's easy to build. If not, you can still build on it, but it's going to cost you more right, to stabilize that or drive pillars into the ground or many different things it could be.
Okay, that takes me to step 2, which is the tax incentives. What is it that attracts a foreign investor into a country, whether it is in Africa or it is in Egypt or it is in the Middle East, to come and invest in what kind of incentives do they look for? So,
yeah, first of all, it's the demand is there, right? That's obviously number one. But if the government is going to give them, like, create a special economic zone or something for a data center, and if they're cutting their tax rate by a certain percentage, that's the thing they're looking at. Like if we're comparing Saudi to Egypt, what's the best deal for them from a business level? Am I going to have to pay 30% in taxes, or am I going to pay 10%? Well, clearly they're going to go,
at all.
Or none at all. In a lot of cases, that's what they'll do for the first several years. That happened in the U.S. You come here, we don't charge you taxes for X number of years.
Okay, so we have electricity, connectivity, and the tax incentives. In order to convince a certain government to give the tax incentives, you must tell them what are the benefits that they would get out of building a modern data center on the ground in order to to give them such incentives, what would lure a government to accept that?
I think it's the obviously the prestige of some of these big companies coming in, like Microsoft, and what they bring with them. It's not just the data center, but they can, they're going to bring a need for people. It's jobs.
So job opportunities.
Job opportunities.
Highly paid, of course.
Highly paid. Yeah.
And do we have in the region enough good engineers to support that industry?
Not to do mega data centers today, I would say. But one thing I've been pleasantly surprised with is several countries in Egypt. One is in particular in Kenya and other countries in Africa, and then in Saudi and in UAE. There's programs to train people to help these people that are taking certain things in engineering in particular and direct them towards a data center driven career. So I think if the governments invest in that, it will happen, and then companies like ours we're looking to come and train people. That's what we want to do, because as an engineer, I love to educate people. So the more I can help them learn and spread what I've learned over 30 years to people in this region to help them avoid the mistakes that we've made over 30 years of learning. So this area is kind of similar to what the U.S. was 25 years ago when we were taking our first splits, going from 2 megawatt data centers to now hundreds. I think we can help educate what we've saw along the way to keep you from making the same mistakes we've made.
Okay, I'll break the line of thought and just go to a question that came to my mind based on what you were saying. Data centers, we used to know when somebody builds a data center for whatever purpose, they say this is a 100 rack the data center. Now you're talking about 100 megawatts. What made the shift from the rack unit to the megawatt unit?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and you're exactly right. All the meetings that we've had in the region, people tend to ask us that. Well, how many racks is that? Well, and back in when we first got started in data centers, and they were 300-400 kW, or 300-400 watts per rack. You counted it in racks because you were worried about the physical space. It was a huge building, so you think about even a 2 megawatt data center have 2,000 racks or something in it, because they were very low power. So now we think more, the racks really are irrelevant because it's more about how much power we're going to have to bring to the site.
It's because of the smaller servers, accordingly the smaller racks, and so on.
Now we get a data center that used to be 100 racks. All of that power now fits in half a rack. So we're less concerned about area and more concerned about power. So the footprint is just continually getting smaller for the rack, but the supporting infrastructure is getting larger. So the number of generators, the number of UPS systems, the number of utility services we have to bring to this. That's what's driving the modern data center, not the number of racks.
That's very funny, because I look at technology at large for example, in mainframe computers. They got smaller into very small computers, even laptops with more power to generate in terms of data, but less power to be consumed in terms of electricity. How come it's not the same thing in data centers?
It's funny. It is a little, like we've went from those large mainframes, as you said, down to small computers. I think if you asked anybody, the iPhones we carry now are more powerful, way more powerful than anything that sent men to the moon. So it's just that there's a it's Moore's law, I think it is, that every 2 years as the processing power increases, things are getting smaller, but the power to drive that smaller thing it's just going through the roof. Now, I do think the AI, we're seeing a trend of power up for each server, but that's going to level off and probably decrease as they make better, more efficient.
New innovations in this respect.
But they're going to pack more of them into a rack, which is still going to move more power. So when you look at it on each unit, yes, it's way more efficient, but there's just many, many more of them.
So, it's just like science fiction movies. It's just like the artificial intelligence animal survives on electricity. It's just like Terminator and movies of the sort. Huh?
Yeah. It certainly is.
Aren't you worried, by the way, because of AI, that we reach what Terminator had anticipated?
Yeah, we talk about that. It's kind of funny. We're already seeing, some issues with AI, with the AI generated videos and images of people. So yeah, it is a concern. I think we're many years away from being at Terminator level, but I do have concerns about identity theft and all kinds of things.
But not only that, you just mentioned in the first part that there is some kind of spending that's happening in military AI. So we would never know. I mean, who would have thought that a war could be waged by drones instead of fighter jets?
Yeah, and we're starting to see that. Yeah, I just saw on the news before I left the U.S. that we're developing the fighter jets that are autonomous, and the Chinese are definitely doing the same thing.
Or maybe they've done it already.
Or probably already done it. Yeah. So we just had I think a U.S. pilot, a female pilot, who just shot down a drone. It's strange that so we're already starting to see drones and interacting with piloted planes, and eventually it's going to all be drones. You got all your airmen are sitting in a chair somewhere in a booth, and it's a lot less chance of losing people. But my concern is the decisions that those machines are going to make. That's Terminator, right? So when are we going to get there one day? I mean, I've already seen things happen that I wasn't sure I was ever going to see in my lifetime. So
I read an interesting comment from a professional here in Egypt about the recent CrowdStrike incident that happened with Microsoft and so on. And he said, had it not been for the human intelligence that corrected the artificial intelligence, things would have gotten worse. How do you agree to this?
Yeah, I think that's true, and that's the concern with artificial intelligence. That's why a lot of people are afraid to give it control of everything, even the simplest things. Where I see one of the things in data centers is just AI controlling the facilities, right? Like the air, when it turns on air, when it turns on water, and they're afraid to give it that control for that very reason. We don't know what decisions it's going to make. It's going to make them strictly based on what we tell it to make. So that's at least today. So yeah, I'm really concerned.
I love this. At least today.
Yeah, at least today. Again, I don't think even in the movie Terminator, I don't think they really realized what was happening until after it happened, and that could be the same for us. I mean, I don't know.
So why go the track?
Yeah.
Why go the track?
I think it's the human and just what we want to do. We just want to drive forward. We want to find all this new things that we think makes our life easier. Right? I think that's really where we're coming from. The fact that that kids can now go on to AI and have it write a paper for them. We're seeing AI write music. We're seeing AI do all this stuff. So people are. Another movie that kind of reminds me of is if you ever saw the cartoon WALL-E, where we became lazy and just sitting in chairs. I mean, that's kind of what we're driving towards. Which is, I'm like you. Should we really be doing that? Probably pump the brakes a little bit and figure out what's happening before we go forward.
All this talk about AI ethics, is it of any significance, or is just talk?
I think it's significant, but it is talk. The AI ethics of this is the whole thing about the videos and the image. You can create an image of anything and make myself look like President Biden or President. You can do any of that.
You wouldn't want that.
I wouldn't want that. So
okay, back in the 90s, if you remember, or if you were not too young, we had the issue of cloning.
Oh yes.
And there was big talk about cloning and the ethics of cloning, and then all of a sudden it went hush-hushed. Do you believe it went hush-hush because nobody's working on it, or is it they learned their lesson and they're working in silence?
They learned their lesson and they're working in silence. And yes, I definitely remember Dolly the Lamb and all of that when we were going through that. So, yeah, and I think that's the same thing. And with the AI ethics that we'll see is we'll drive it underground, but it'll still happen.
But I mean, aren't you worried that, now it's 20 years or more since Dolly and all this, that you would see that there's major development that has happened, and all of a sudden the guy sitting next to you at the office is a clone?
Yeah, yeah, that would be strange, but it could happen. I mean, I don't know. In our day, it's interesting. In our world today, it's so open to everything, but we're still seeing things happen behind doors that we don't know about. That's coming out of nowhere. So it wouldn't surprise me. I know cloning in China, I can guarantee they're doing stuff that we don't know about, and it's just the nature, because it's something that it's a coming from the U.S. and being a Christian as a background, it's an ethical thing, even from a religious aspect.
Well, you talk about probably the Chinese are doing that, but even though Dolly came from the U.S., not from China.
Came from the U.S.
So I mean, if you're expecting something evil to happen, why do you expect it from the East, not from within?
No, it's it could happen within. Now, I don't want to come off and say that it's the U.S. We don't do anything wrong. We're just as human as everybody else.
We're all humans. Yeah,
we're all
that's
humans.
True. But humans with power is different than humans without power.
For sure.
Power of science, power of knowledge, power of tools, power of a lot of things. I mean, sometimes the intelligence of people is a bliss, and sometimes it's the curse for others.
I agree with that, yes.
All right, so my final question is about the area, the Middle East, Egypt. Will we see in the near future big data centers, especially ones working on for the purpose of AI development, happening faster than before, or it will take some time?
So it's definitely going to happen faster than you probably imagine. We know for sure that Microsoft has invested to build a 100 megawatt data center here in Egypt. That's on the books. It's announced. It's going to happen. And then just on May 22nd of this year, they also announced that they're going to build a $1 billion investment in Kenya for an AI data center, and they're going to do AI research there. So it's definitely going to happen in Northern Africa and Africa in general in the next 5 years.
But it doesn't surprise you when you know that they're building a mega data center or a hyperscale data center in a small country like Kenya, where the data available is minimal. Where are the economics?
I think they're looking for emerging markets, but I would ask the same question. Kenya seems like not the first market I would have suggested, but again, Microsoft knows something I don't. So they're there for a reason, and I think it's a little bit of to develop some talent there, and probably keep some stuff on the down low that might not want everybody to know about.
Because I mean, as far as I know, which is very little, that you start in a place where you have a lot of data. You start in Nigeria, you start in Egypt, you start in South Africa, where you have a big population that has a lot of data. But talent is everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't need to go to a small country. I mean, you can get people from Kenya to work on your project somewhere if the talent is there.
That's true. So the one in Egypt made a lot of sense to us. We were surprised by the one in Kenya, and again, it's a 100% AI driven venture for Microsoft there. And
are you designing the one in Kenya?
We are not.
You're not.
No.
So you don't know the secrets.
Don't know the secrets.
It's been a pleasure meeting you. I enjoyed very much the talk. I learned a lot. I'm sure our viewers have also known something that has been missing or they've been asking questions about. So I thank you very much for being here.
So thank you very much for having me.
شكري لضيفي الكريم جيمي سنيد، المدير العام لمراكز البيانات WB. الحقيقة هو قدم لنا شكل مختلف عن حاجة بعضنا يعرف جزء عنها، بعضنا يعرف حاجات أكتر، بعضنا ما يعرفش، لكن شكل العالم بيتغير وهياخد شكل تاني خالص، وفي حاجات مش بس خفية علينا، لا ده خفية حتى على الخبراء. ونقول يا رب استر، ونشوفكم الحلقة الجاية على خير إن شاء الله.